Today, I bring you a Korean film. The story begins with a bloody accident that happened 10 years ago. Her father died suddenly in that incident. Not long after, the young girl, Ip Sae, witnessed her mother's death with her own eyes. The immense psychological trauma caused by the brutal loss of her parents completely shattered her. It left her paralyzed from the waist down. From that moment on, she could only lie in bed. With both parents gone, Ip Sae survives almost entirely on community welfare support. However, this seemingly ordinary house serves as a community care facility during the day, but at night, it transforms into a haven for demons. Idle gangsters often climb through her window in the dead of night. They gather around her bed, blowing smoke rings, hurling insults at her, even lying beside her. Powerless to resist, Ip Sae endures everything in silence. Her only form of resistance is to frown and shut her eyes in the endless darkness, waiting for dawn, a dawn that never truly brings light. A nurse named Ja Young, who graduated from a prestigious school in England, is assigned to care for her during the day. In front of others, especially God and the priests, Ja Young appears gentle and compassionate, but when no one is around, her true nature surfaces. She vents her frustrations on Ip Sae. Knowing Ip Sae cannot move, she deliberately turns the volume up to a deafening level. She waves scissors in front of her, mocks her as useless, and even threatens to ruin her beautiful face, simply because that face has drawn the attention of a senior official. This kind of petty evil exists everywhere in reality. Some people, unable to resist oppression from above, seek psychological balance by tormenting those who suffer more than they do. It is a pitiful form of power compensation. Even in confusion, they still try to find meaning by controlling the dignity of others. Director Jin of the community is no better. He often enters Ip Sae's room under the pretense of trimming her nails, but there is always something sinister in his eyes. Not only does he secretly pocket the nursing and treatment fees meant for her, but he also conspires with Ja Young, using Ip Sae's home as their private meeting place. He behaves intimately with the nurse right beside her bed, completely ignoring Ip Sae's awareness and silent suffering. In my view, Ip Sae's paralysis feels like an extreme form of self-defense. As long as she doesn't move, doesn't fight, doesn't resist, if she pretends to be completely helpless, perhaps the monsters will grow bored and leave. Often, what truly traps a person is not the bed, but the loss of faith in the world. There are also two priests from a nearby church, one old, one young, who visit frequently. The younger priest, Jo Kong-sik, was a friend of Ip Sae's mother when she was alive. He always prays devoutly for her. Yet, for some reason, Ip Sae feels an unexplainable fear toward him. What finally breaks this stagnant life is an ordinary morning. When Ip Sae wakes up, she is horrified to find a strange middle-aged man lying beside her. He is unshaven, with sorrowful eyes, and his entire presence radiates a wild, beast-like intensity. After entering the room, he lifts Ip Sae from the bed as if carrying cargo, puts her back down, and even straps her to a chair with a belt. Terrified, her heart nearly stops. She thinks another monster has come to torment her. What happens next is completely unexpected. The man quietly walks into the kitchen and, somewhat clumsily, prepares a steak for Ip Sae. Although he appears indifferent, he never harms her. In fact, he even takes the initiative to do the laundry, wash the dishes, and clean the house. After an investigation by the community director, the identity of this mysterious man is finally revealed. He is Ip Sae's uncle. He had been imprisoned for years, only to be released early after being diagnosed with terminal cancer. The trauma from years ago completely destroyed his voice. Now, he can only communicate through sign language and his fierce, intimidating presence. His arrival is like a sharp nail, piercing directly into the interests of the director and the nurse. They can no longer blatantly embezzle welfare funds, nor dare to sneak into Ip Sae's room as they used to. Though he looks rough and extreme, he protects his niece in his own silent way. One night, a familiar thug climbs through the window again, crawls onto Ip Sae's bed, and attempts to harass her. Suddenly, the uncle, who has been waiting in the shadows, bursts out and beats the man so badly that he flees in humiliation. The next day, the uncle finds wooden planks and iron nails, personally sealing the window shut. That window doesn't just block out the evil from outside, it also gives Ip Sae, for the first time, the feeling of having a real home. After receiving even a small amount of warmth, Ip Sae begins to open up to her uncle. She tells him when she's hungry, watches his clumsy movements, and for the first time in a long while, she smiles. In this village that thrives on exploitation, the uncle's presence becomes the only barrier, and those who benefit from the darkness will not sit still and accept it. But the villains do not wait quietly. The community director, desperate to get rid of the uncle, deliberately calls the police and falsely accuses him of abusing Ip Sae. Soon, the officer who once handled the uncle's case returns. While issuing a stern warning, he also reveals a secret that has been buried for years. Back then, the uncle was imprisoned for harming his sister-in-law, Ip Sae's mother. After preparing a meal, the uncle silently uses gestures and expressions to admit to the long-buried crime. Hearing this, Ip Sae is completely devastated. She cannot accept that the man who has cared for her so devotedly is the one who killed her mother. Afterward, the uncle walks out in despair. Broken and hopeless, he can only leave. Once he is gone, Ip Sae's life quickly becomes worse than before. The abuse intensifies. The community director and the nurse once again treat her home like their private playground. But the most horrifying truth is yet to come. The young priest can no longer suppress the filth in his heart. When no one is around, he approaches Ip Sae's bed, and while touching her, he arrogantly reveals the truth about what happened years ago. The uncle was never the killer. It was all a mistake. Back then, the uncle had left home. It was only after Ip Sae's father died unexpectedly that he returned, sincerely caring for both mother and daughter. But such pure devotion, living together under one roof, sparked jealousy and rumors within the village. Driven by desire to possess Ip Sae's mother, the local elites and the priest conspired together. They carried out a brutal act of violence. Not only did they abuse her mother, but they also forced the uncle to take a piece of cloth and kill his own sister-in-law. When he resisted to protect Ip Sae, he was surrounded and beaten. His throat was viciously slashed, destroying his voice forever. In the end, the real killers used their power and connections to place all the blame on him. Seeing that Ip Sae was becoming more and more like her mother, the greedy priest begins to lose control and takes off his pants. Just as he is about to commit something unforgivable, a shadow suddenly lunges out from the corner. It turns out, the uncle never really left. He had been hiding in the darkness all along. He immediately knocks the priest down, and the two clash violently. Despite being gravely ill, the uncle fights back. At first, he is beaten badly, even mocked by the priest. But whether it's because of all the evil the priest has committed, or because villains always talk too much before they fall, the priest suddenly begins to hallucinate. Ip Sae's mother appears before him. Seizing the moment of panic, the uncle strikes. He suddenly rises and crushes the priest under his feet. Watching the priest die right before her eyes and seeing her uncle covered in blood, Ip Sae's entire worldview collapses. She realizes that there are no truly good people in this world. The so-called fairness of rules, religion, and the warmth of the community are nothing more than the last fig leaf covering the filth and hypocrisy of a group of so-called believers. She once thought death was simply the end. But her uncle lets out a furious roar. Though no sound comes out, it carries an overwhelming will to survive. If injustice has become the norm, then she will resist in her own way. At this moment, Ip Sae fully awakens. She no longer pretends to be a helpless, disabled girl waiting for salvation. She finds hair dye in the house and colors her hair herself. With striking red hair, bold makeup, and a defiant outfit, she looks as if she is declaring war on the entire world. She is no longer weak. Because she understands now, in a place like this, kindness and innocence will only be torn to pieces. Only by becoming ruthless and clear-minded can she truly protect herself. Ip Sae takes the initiative to invite the nurse over for tea. When the nurse, out of habit, tries to insult her, Ip Sae responds in a cold, chilling tone. Her overwhelming presence frightens the once dominant nurse, who even unconsciously begins to speak to her with respect. At last, Ip Sae understands the truth of human nature. The weaker you are, the crueler they become. The more ruthless you are, the more they retreat. She treats the nurse like an experiment, drawing on her face, abusing her at will. Then, she calls in the community director, Director Kim, and orders the nurse to kill the disgusting man on the spot. Watching these two former allies turn on each other to survive, Ip Sae experiences the thrill of revenge for the first time. And once ignited, the flames of her vengeance will not be easily extinguished. She sets a trap, luring the gangsters to climb through the window once again. Meanwhile, her uncle, like an executioner in the shadows, deals with each piece of human filth one by one. The last to arrive is the old police officer who once ruined her uncle's life without ever distinguishing right from wrong. In a fierce struggle, the uncle, already terminally ill, finally runs out of strength. With the last of his power, he suppresses the officer, then collapses heavily to the ground, never to rise again. Seeing her uncle lying in a pool of blood, something inside Ip Sae finally shatters. All the suppressed memories surge back like a tidal wave. 10 years ago, on the day her mother was murdered, her uncle had hidden her in the room. He told her again and again, never leave the bed, not even for a single step. And because of those words, Ip Sae unconsciously forced herself into paralysis for 15 years, just to survive. It's not that she truly couldn't walk. It was that her heart had been trapped in that blood-soaked night, and she never dared to step away from that bed. But now, her uncle has used his life to remove the final barrier holding her back. Ip Sae trembles as she stretches her body. Her toes touch the cold floor. She clutches the edge of the bed, falling again and again, crawling forward with all her strength. And finally, the girl who had been paralyzed for 15 years stands up, miraculously, over her uncle's body. She pushes open the long sealed door of the old house. The sunlight outside is almost blinding. The wind lifts her red hair, carrying with it the breath of freedom. She is no longer a sacrifice waiting to be devoured. She is a woman who has crawled out of the abyss of hell and reclaimed a new life. The film ends with Ip Sae walking into the distance. Though her uncle is gone, what he left her is more than just recovery. Through revenge, a soul that had long been dead regains the strength to stand and to walk. This film is never just a simple story of revenge. It is the story of a girl's complete awakening. The strange paintings on the walls throughout the film had already foretold the ending. The peering eyes represent those who silently watch and tolerate evil. The smiling faces symbolize hypocrites, pretending to be righteous. The violent shadows are the criminals who commit evil without restraint. The soaring bird represents the cold, indifferent police. And the figure nailed to the cross is Ip Sae herself, once helpless and in despair. The film shows us clearly. There are always dark, damp corners in this world where sunlight never reaches. Evil wears the armor of caregivers, priests, and police officers, treating the abuse of the weak as something ordinary. If Ip Sae had continued to endure, she would have slowly rotted away on that moldy bed. Because once human nature falls out of control, it becomes more terrifying than the abyss itself. And when a soul finally awakens, it shines brighter than the sun. To be honest, this world can be so cruel that it makes people want to shut their hearts and remain numb forever. But even so, please remember, even in the deepest hell, there will always be a ray of light. Even if that light is scarred, it will still do everything it can to tell you. You can stand up, you can step outside, and you can see the rainbow. After watching this film, I hope that all the silence and concealment in this world can be washed away, and that every soul trapped in the abyss can be as brave as the red-haired girl, opening the door, stepping out, and walking toward the sunlight.